If you are someone like me, someone who now on a daily basis witnesses all that has been happening in the ever increasing level of violence being caused by the rhetoric of activist politicians and rage baiters within this country, you probably also find yourself regularly astounded by how blind many have become to the most basic of political, intellectual, moral, and factual truths. You probably have wondered many times how people plaster themselves openly on the internet, boasting as to how wise they claim to be, how understanding, how aware they are. Yet, through the ridiculous things they say, only demonstrate themselves to be completely oblivious to how embarrassingly blind, misled, and ignorant their ramblings truly are. This is what I call blind bias, that which I believe is actually the greatest threat to our democracy. So let's talk about that. Deaf, dumb, and blind. This is traditionally a negatively intended descriptor attributed to a person or persons who openly demonstrates a stubborn resistance to any evidence that would lead them out of the ignorance they clearly display on any given topic. This is why this descriptor includes the usage of the words deaf, meaning that they cannot hear truth, dumb, meaning that they are incapable of understanding any truth that clearly exceeds the basic level of intellect they currently possess concerning the topic at hand, and lastly, blind, meaning that they simply cannot see truth. Yet, what is necessary to note with the usage of this particular descriptor when applied directly to a person is that the purpose intended behind its usage is solely to insult the obvious, childish intention of the person to consciously resist becoming educated. In other words, this person wants to remain deaf, dumb, and blind for the sake of justifying his stance on the subject at hand. What is most concerning is that many of those like this overtly prides themselves in their unrealized yet embarrassing ignorance. Now, one who can think rationally would of course question why in the world would someone purposely want to remain deaf, dumb, and blind? After all, don't we all possess enough self respect that we would not want to be seen as an idiot? Well, the answer to that is quite simple. You see, when someone wants to justify what they want to believe more than what is right to believe, then they must consciously deny all evidentiary truth that they know would invalidate their belief. It is simply that they place more value on what they want to be true over that which is actually true. It is the immature, argumentative reaction a child would have towards a parent who attempts to teach them greater truths. It is grounded within the immaturity and naivete of those who judge what is true solely on the basis of how it makes them feel. They adopt feeling orientated beliefs rather than a logical, mature, informed understanding of proven evidence and fact.
I don't think most liberals are insane, but neither do they make it clear they disapprove of the ones who are, and their cowardice in not marginalizing their own crazies has been their downfall. I couldn't get Neil deGrasse Tyson, a genius scientist and preeminent scientific voice in the media, to agree that it was ridiculous for Scientific American and The Atlantic to be claiming that separating sports by sex doesn't make sense. Yes, it does. Actually, it makes perfect sense. And it's obvious that it does. And there's a lot of stuff like that on the left.
As with what seems to now be the daily occurrence of politically inspired violence, not just within our country, but in the world, it becomes blatantly evident that there needs to be a dramatic focus placed upon the level of truth that politicians, activists, and media outlets promote publicly on their platforms. Too many of these people purposely manipulate and edit the truth to create a false narrative that implies something other than the truth. And they do this intentionally to create the societal anger and hate that they know will continue to cause great, even violent opposition to those who have differing views than theirs. Yet what many of these people who buy into this rage-baiting rhetoric refuse to understand is that these politicians and activists, they do this because first and foremost, they on a personal level continue to gain a great deal of financial profit from it. Secondly, and although they will always deny it, they want to instigate violent responses from their followers towards those on the opposite side of them. This is why you will often hear those on the progressive left communicate their desire to make those who disagree with them too afraid to speak. You see, we all know that fear comes only from the threat of violence, not dialogue. So, in essence, they rely upon the willingness of you, their own constituents, you who they claim to care so much about, to by your own choice remain self deprecatingly and embarrassingly ignorant enough to be the pawns in the political games they are playing. You see, although they purposely spout these deceptive narratives to enrage you, they will not be the ones who will commit the crimes of violence that they hope others will commit. And that because they do not want to wreck their own lives by having to go to jail. Nor do they think they have to when they know that there are plenty of their followers who will easily be inspired to do it for them. The truth is that they simply do not care if your life gets wrecked, so long as what they want done against their opponents gets done. There is an old quote that is often attributed to Mark Twain, which says, "It's easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled." This is the reason I believe that political blind bias is the greatest threat to democracy. You see, when certain people choose to exist only within the bubble of their political bias, they make themselves so easily manipulated that they will believe anything they are told without question or without even having any desire to discover for themselves whether or not what they are told is true. Now, in all honesty, anyone who chooses to do that does it because those who really do not possess any real evidence or truthful facts to support their beliefs are simply too afraid of having to face the surety that their beliefs will be challenged by actual facts and hence force them to have to accept what is true. The old saying of how ignorance is bliss should now add that it is also the means to justify a person's false beliefs. That is why, whenever you see the multitude of videos online where those on the progressive left are challenged by what is true, they respond only with unhinged screaming, name calling, threats, and violence. They do that because, when questioned, most of them cannot provide a single factual reason to support why they believe what they do, showing that they exist only to believe whatever they are told.
Is racist? Yeah. Okay, everybody agrees. Give me one thing I've said or done that's racist.
I just have a question about racism.
Well, that's who we're talking about.
No, it has to do with the same thing.
Well, I'm asking her. She accused me of being racist. I do want to know one thing I've said that's racist.
I would like to hear her talk.
You called me racist. What's one thing I've said that's racist?
Hence, they become the very essence of those who are easily fooled, because being used as a fool is by their choice the guardrail by which they do not have to face the immense fear they have of discovering that their feelings are not a reliable means to define what is actually true. A perfect example to make my point of how foolish blind bias is can be found in the contrast of how much liberals passionately hated Charlie Kirk because they were told that he was supposedly transphobic and homophobic, versus how supportive they are of Palestine and Hamas. You see, Charlie Kirk did nothing more than voice his opinions. Yet the nonstop rhetoric and the clearly edited sound bites of the progressive left to specifically enrage their followers against him and his conservative values by creating a false narrative about his true belief eventually built up the vitriol so much within progressive liberals that a person on the left actually assassinated him. Yet these same progressive liberals who gleefully celebrated his assassination online adamantly and openly support and protest for the cause of Hamas and Palestine, where homosexuals have been and are continually killed for being gay. How can liberals justify viciously hating and killing a man who in truth supported a person's right to be a homosexual, even though he was clear that he didn't agree with the lifestyle personally, continue supporting those who openly and regularly brag about how they kill people just for being homosexual? Where has their opposition to Hamas killing homosexuals been? How come Hamas can openly brag about it, but the progressive liberals never rally against them? How many lies must a person be told before he learns to not just believe everything he hears? This is the point I'm attempting to make in all of this. You see, as the quote implies, it is very difficult to lead a fool to the realization of his foolishness. And unless a person has enough courage, self respect, and dignity of character whereby he hates the idea of being played as a fool, he will continue to justify the completely irrational beliefs he holds. Such is clearly displayed in the example I just provided. For a democracy to not only survive, but to thrive, it must be based upon the foundation of truth. Because if it is not, then it is by definition based upon the foundation of actual authoritarianism. A system where whatever the one in power dictates is true is what the people must believe is true. An authoritarian government eventually comes into power when the people themselves choose to discard what is true and begin justifying their support of lies. It happens when the people stop caring about the value of their own personal integrity, whereby they no longer require themselves to be right in what it is that they believe. It happens when people no longer possess a sense of personal dignity, whereby they not only care that they are being played for a fool through their purposed ignorance, but that they have learned to deceive themselves so that although they act the fool, they can believe themselves to be wise. This is the intended purpose of those who are hiding behind the scenes, manipulating mindless people into becoming the malignant cancer that could actually one day destroy our democracy. I can only thank God that recently we have been experiencing, not just in the United States, but all over the world, a growing, powerful movement to restore truth and common sense to our societies. Thank God we are currently seeing many testimonies online of those who are waking up to the truth and publicly exposing the lies they were so easily led to believe. It is interesting how, in every one of these testimonies, although these people do not know each other, they all say the exact same things about what the hateful rhetoric spewed by these political and media figureheads was doing to them. And in how, once they looked outside the bubble and began to see the unedited truth, whereby they began to change their views, they all have been experiencing the same targeted hate and anger from those friends and family members who yet remain within the bubble. Let's face it, targeted, hateful, even violent conduct like that to control others' views is the greatest threat to democracy and the very definition of fascism and authoritarianism. If violent responses to others who have differing values become an accepted belief system for the majority, then we truly will see the end of democracy and the establishment of a true fascist government. Through the grace of God, we can only hope that the recent awakening of many on the Democratic left to the destructive influence of progressive ideology revealed through the assassination of Charlie Kirk will continue. And those who choose to be pawns of activist ideologies will find the courage to seek out what is true and learn the value of being able to think for themselves. Because if not, should this dangerous progressive liberal movement of creating a people who establish their belief system solely upon a blind political bias increases to become the way of the majority, then democracy will truly end, and it will be these very people who destroyed it. So, those are my thoughts. As usual, I encourage you to feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you find that my thoughts give you cause to think more deeply about the various subject matter I speak on, then do me a favor and hit that like button, as likes and comments help get my videos out there for others to see. Don't forget to hit that notification bell as well, as doing so will make sure that you never miss a new video. Well, that's it for me today. And as always, I want to express my deep appreciation for those of you who have supported me by having subscribed to the channel. However, if you're someone who hasn't yet subscribed, I would be very grateful if you would consider taking a quick second to hit that subscribe button, as that is paramount in growing the channel. So once again, thank you very much for having taken the time to have listened. May God richly bless you and yours. Until next time.